the spinal cord itself first. Remember, the spinal cord is part of our central nervous system, and that was consisted of the brain as well as the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is going to run from the brain stem right here. So basically, the medulla is continuous with your spinal cord. When it exits the skull through that foramen magnum, it ceases to be brainstem and becomes spinal cord. So it's all one, just one long tube. So it runs from the brainstem to approximately the level of L2. Remember how our bones are numbered? So that would be right in, yep, right in this area right here. You'll see that the spinal cord there, if you can see on that picture, little picture you see, so you'll see that the spinal cord kind of tapers to a point there. That point there is called the conus medullaris. So that marks the bottom of the spinal cord there. And again, that ends at about the level of L2. What you will notice is that there is still a chunk of nerves. You'll see all these nerves exiting as off the spinal cord. You'll see below where the spinal cord ends, there are still nerves that are exiting. That area there is called the cauda equina. Cauda equina, meaning horse's tail, because basically what happens is your spinal cord stops growing before you stop growing, before your bones stop growing, before you stop getting taller. So the nerves form this horse's tail as they just keep going, as the nerves extend down and exit further down below. So we've got our spinal cord running from the base of the brainstem to about L2. That spinal cord, again, it ends at the conus medullaris in this horse's tail, and periodically that spinal cord is going to have these enlargements. You can see it's listed here on your diagram here, cervical enlargement. You see again the lumbar enlargement. Those areas of enlargement are going to give rise to the nerve plexus. So they're going to give rise to a nerve plexus. Basically, what we're seeing here are these thickenings of this enlargement of the spinal cord, because these are what are going to give rise to the spinal nerves that are going to go down our arms and then that are going to go down our legs. So there's an enlargement there of the spinal tissue because I'm going to have more nerve there as I go to control the arms and the legs. So the spinal cord, again, since it is part of our central nervous system, is protected in a manner very similar to the brain. The spinal cord has our three meningeal layers, and they're in the same order, basically the same structure. So we have that dura mater on the outside, tough, thick, strong, protective, helps anchor it to the bone. Okay. Then we have the arachnoid mater, that spider webby layer, and then we have the pia mater. So if we look at the picture over here on the right, okay, you can see how it looks kind of shiny. Okay, these shiny areas, okay, that is the pia mater that you're seeing reflected here. So see your diagram here, this is your dura mater and arachnoid mater being pulled back. You can see it. So this that you're seeing is actual spinal cord tissue. Okay, and that spinal cord tissue is being held in place by what are called the denticulate ligaments. Okay, diagram here, these denticulate ligaments. So these are help holding the spinal cord in place. Because remember, as we said with the brain, the spinal cord, it needs to be protected from the bone itself. While the bone is helping protect it, we also don't want to smash the nervous tissue into the bone. So the spinal cord has these three meningeal layers, or dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater, to help protect it. The spinal cord is also surrounded by that cerebrospinal fluid. If you remember from our previous information with the brain, right, the cerebrospinal fluid was created in the choroid plexus and basically went from lateral ventricles to third ventricles down that cerebral aqueduct to the fourth ventricle. And then from that fourth ventricle, that fluid kind of had two choices. It could go straight into the subarachnoid space around the brain, or it could have gone down the central canal of the spinal cord. So the spinal cord itself has It has cerebral spinal fluid traveling down it through the central canal, and we'll look at a picture of that. And it also has cerebral spinal fluid surrounding it in that subarachnoid space, just like the brain. So it has that fluid barrier that helps protect it. But again, remember, this is basically a big long tail, a big long cord that's hanging down. And so to keep it from swinging when you move, we have these denticulate ligaments. So these denticulate ligaments here are helping anchor that spinal cord in so it doesn't swing around as you. So as we look at a side view here, you can see the spinal cord in yellow there traveling between the spine, the bones of the spine. The spinal nerves are going to exit between the vertebrae through those intervertebral discs. Remember when you look sideways at the vertebrae, you have the facet that would come off, and then you have the process. And so when these vertebrae, they are lined up by facet, process, facet, right? And then here's the disc in the middle. I get this opening here. Opening here with my intervertebral foramen, and that's where my spinal nerves can exit out through there. So you'll see your spinal nerves exiting. You'll see your spinal nerves are named just like the bones were. They're numbered, right? So I have C1, C2, C3. What is a little bit weird is that I have 8 cervical nerves. Okay, so let's do a little bone nerve comparison. So bone, I had in the cervical region, I have 7. Okay, nerves, I have 8. In the thoracic region, bone-wise, I had 12. Nerve-wise, I also have 12. In the lumbar region, bone-wise, I had 5. Nerve-wise, I have 5. Okay, and then we also have some nerves coming out of the sacral region. Down below, you can see them there at the base. You have 31 pairs of spinal nerves in total. So we had 12 pairs of cranial nerves. I have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So where it is a little weird is in the cervical region here, and the fact that I have 7 bones, but I have 8 cervical nerves. So when they are named, when you are naming these nerves here, in the cervical region, the nerve is named for the bone it exits above. So you can see how this is my C1 bone, and the nerve is exiting above the C1 bone. So this is my C4, and the nerve is exiting above the C4. So if I come down here, I've got C7, and then remember I have 8 cervical nerves. So where it gets a little weird is I've got C8. So C8 is going to be below C7 and above T1. So what that makes happen then is once I hit the thoracic region and for the rest of the way down, they are named for the bone it exits above. And so they're just counted. Lumbar and in the sacral. So you're just counting them. Again, so cervical region, they're named for the bone they exit above. There are not 8 cervical vertebrae though. So C8 is my weirdo and where I make my transition. C8 is below C7, above T1. And so from then on, all the rest, the thoracic, lumbar, sacral, they will be named for where they exit below. Okay, so let's look a little bit closer at the spinal cord itself, and then we'll look at how these spinal nerves are formed as they're going to go then exit the actual spinal column. So the spinal nerve itself has the spinal cord has white matter on the outside and gray matter on the inside. Okay? White matter is myelinated and gray matter is not myelinated. The brain, this is the opposite. We've got gray matter on the outside and white matter on the inside. Okay, so this is a cross section of the spinal cord. So basically what we've done here is here's the spinal cord. We cut it, we made a transverse cut, and now we're looking down onto it. Okay, so the gray matter forms a butterfly shape pattern in the middle there. So the white matter is going to be divided into columns. Okay, and the white and so those columns are renamed basically from where they are located. So when you see a cross section of the spinal cord like this, you're asked to label it or identify anything. You'll want to look for this right here. Okay, this indentation here lets you mark the anterior side of the spinal cord. So we have dorsal columns in the white matter, dorsal being in the rear, right, and right and left. So this would be the area of the dorsal column. The dorsal column is going to carry all sensory information. So it's going to be carrying sensory information up to the brain. The dorsal or posterior column is the same thing. So this is carrying sensory info to the brain. And then in the white matter, we also have lateral columns. So those would be out on the lateral edge here. So these would be your lateral columns. Your lateral columns are going to contain both sensory and motor information, as well as those anterior columns or ventral columns. So they'll be down here in the front, right? And again, these could be referred to as ventral or anterior columns. And again, those are going to be both sensory and motor information. So nerves going both directions, carrying information up to the brain and down from the brain. Within the gray matter, within the butterflies there, you're going to see neuron cell bodies as well as interneurons. Remember, interneurons were the same as association neurons. Basically, those are neurons that run between other neurons, right? Short little neurons that are running between other neurons. So within that gray matter, you're going to have horns. And again, they're named for where they are located. So I have dorsal or posterior horns. So dorsal or posterior horn. And then I also have anterior or ventral horn. So here's the front, basically the edges of those butterfly wings. And then right in the middle, and this doesn't really show it, but right in the middle, you have a little hole. Okay, and that hole there, that is your central canal. That is what is allowing that cerebral spinal fluid to go right there through the middle of the spinal cord, helping to nourish it, helping to take care of it. So white matter has the columns, gray matter has the horns. They're named for where they're located. Okay, the columns, because they're white matter and the information travels faster, that's going to have the majority of the nerves that are going up and down, communicating with the brain. So sensory ones in the dorsal column, and then a mix of sensory and motor in both the lateral and the anterior portion. Okay, so let's get a little bit more specific about these spinal nerves as they come off the cord. So remember, we have the 31 pairs, 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, and then a couple in the sacral region. The thoracic on down are named as they exit the bone. Cervicals are named as they exit above, right, with that exception of CA. So those nerves are what we call mixed nerves. By mixed nerves, we mean that they have both sensory and motor information that they're carrying. These nerves are really, really short. They're only about half an inch long, and then they start branching. So let's kind of look at what they're made out of. Okay, so these spinal nerves are formed from a dorsal root and a ventral root. So we look at this image here. This is all spinal cord right here. And so remember, we're looking for the indentation, so that tells me that's the anterior side. So I have on the back here, I have a dorsal root. And see the dorsal root, there's the dorsal root. And then I have a ventral root on the front. So ventral root, ventral root. You'll see they come together very briefly right here. Ignore the overlap. They come together very briefly right there. That's my spinal nerve. So all of this is happening, obviously in a large type picture. Okay? All of this is happening. I don't get the bone until about here. Okay? This is kind of marking the edges of my bone. So the middle part there is all happening within that spinal column. So those roots are really actually very, very short. You'll notice that dorsal root has this lump or this enlargement. That is called the dorsal root ganglion. Ganglia is plural. Okay, so a ganglia is just a group of neuron cell bodies located outside of the CNS. So that's why it's a bulge there, because I've got these neuron cell bodies. I've got a clump of these neuron cell bodies there, and so that's what that bulge is. So each one has the dorsal root ganglia. So this dorsal root and the ventral root come together to form this spinal nerve. And then you'll notice that spinal nerve is really short, like I said, it's about half an inch long. And so it is branching almost immediately into the dorsal and ventral ramus. So here is my dorsal ramus, and here's my ventral ramus. So the dorsal ramus is going to go to the muscles and sensory in the posterior trunk. So at whatever level I'm at. So if this is in my upper cervical, it's going to be in my upper back. If it was in the lumbar region, this would go to the muscles and the skin on my lower back area. So that's where my dorsal ramus is going to be. The ventral ramus is going to depend upon where it is located. So the ventral ramus in the thoracic region is going to stay local right there. It's going to go form the intercostal nerve. So basically it's going to form the nerves that go between all the ribs, between costal rib cartilage. So it's going to go between the ribs. So this is going to get the anterior and lateral aspect of the trunk. Now in the cervical and the lumbar region, it's going to go form those nerve plexus that we talked about. The plexus is a network of nerves, and so in the cervical and lumbar region, it will go form the nerve plexus that is going to help control our arms and our legs. And so we'll look at the nerve plexus and what they do in just a second. Okay, so before we get to each plexus, let's look at how these spinal nerves are protected. So these spinal nerves are going to be surrounded by protective covering, very, very similar to muscles. Right, so this whole thing is my spinal nerve. The epineurum is the outermost layer. It wraps up the whole spinal nerve, just like the epimyosin did for the muscles. So it wraps up the whole nerve bundle, and it holds the fascicles together. It takes all the fascicles, all the little bundles, and holds the whole fascicle together. Remember, the fascicle was the bundle, right? And again, very similar to muscles, that is perineurum now instead of perimysium. The perineurum is around a fascicle, and the endoneurium is around each actual nerve fiber. So again, remember these spinal nerves are mixed nerves. They're containing sensory and motor information. And so they're made up of lots and lots of nerve fibers. And so the endoneurium will surround and protect each individual fiber. The perineurum will help bundle those into fascicles. And then the epineurum will bundle it into one large nerve. And you can see the zoomed in here on each fascicle. I've got perineurum surrounding it, and then epineurum going all the way. Okay, so let's look at our first plexus here. We're not going to memorize every nerve that comes from every plexus. Okay, you're not going to be asked to label every single nerve that comes from every plexus. You are not going to be asked to label every single muscle that the nerve controls. We're going to stick to like muscles and functions that we've already covered, okay, and then we're just going to apply them to these nerves. So in this cervical plexus, the only one that we're really going to focus on is the phrenic nerve here. Okay? The phrenic nerve is so important. The phrenic nerve is really important because it's what controls all help to make up the furniture. So together, those are all going to make up the furniture. And this becomes important because in spinal cord injury, if I have a spinal cord injury, that's the level C1, C2, now I'm on a because it's I cannot breathe on my own because my nerve that controls my diaphragm has been damaged. But if I have an injury below those levels, I may still have enough functioning phrenic nerve where I can breathe on my own and I'm not on a ventilator. And that's a huge, huge difference. Yes, I understand you're paralyzed, but it's a huge difference in quality of life to not be attached to it. So again, this is in the cervical plexus, and this is the only nerve we're going to pull out of that plexus. Okay. So now let's switch over to the brachial and the lumbar. So these are the nerves that we're going to pull out of our brachial plexus. And again, we'll have a list from lumbar and sacral. All I'm going to do right now is point out to you where they are located. And then we're going to have you within your group in class. You're going to be spending some time between your book and then your previous resources on muscles. We're going to be looking a little deeper into the particular muscles you're going to be pulling up and researching the information for the particular muscles that they innervate, as well as a group coming up with how a doctor could easily and quickly test to see if those muscles are. Okay, we're not going to do nerve roots for any of these either. We might do we probably will for the plexus itself, but not for the nerves themselves. So my brachial plexus is made up of T1. And you can see them coming off right here, and then they start to form this plexus network of nerves. And then these nerves are going to run down your arm. That's why sometimes a lot of injuries or issues that are happening down in our arms, they actually could be coming from our neck, because that's where the nerve starts. So our first one that we're going to do is the axillary nerve. The axillary nerve is this, you can just see a little bit of it branching out right there. It's this nerve that basically is in the axillary region in the armpit. Okay, so it's coming out here. Okay, our next one is the median nerve. The median nerve is this one in the middle, right? Median. Okay, so that's my median nerve there. So the median nerve is going to run right down the middle of the arm there. Okay, and this is hard. I gotta get used to this, not telling me what it is. Okay, and so it's gonna do things more in the forearm and in the hand. It's not gonna do much in the arm itself, in the upper part of the arm. Okay, so our next one is our musculocutaneous nerve. Okay, so the musculocutaneous nerve is going to be this one that kind of, let's say it kind of stops short up here in the arm region. The main kind of cellular nerve, out of skin and muscle. Okay, the radial nerve, you remember the radius is on the thumb side of our hand. Okay, and so there's our radial nerve there. There'll be a lot on the back side of our arm. And then the ulnar nerve goes right down the ulna. So if we remember our bones, we're going to have to remember which side radial and ulnar nerves are on. So these are the main nerves for the brachial plexus. Like I said, you've got a chart in your book. So I'm sorry, I got interrupted by a child. The chart in your book will kind of give you a jumping off point, like it does muscles that do these kinds of motions, and then we can go back and use our muscle chart and figure out exactly which muscles that is. Okay, so in the lumbar plexus, so this lumbar plexus is going to start from the nerve in the lumbar region. Okay, it's going to have roots in L1 through L5. And then the sacral plexus is going to be below that. The sacral plexus is going to have a little bit of L4 and L5, so those are a couple, and then those sacral nerves are going to be S4. Sometimes people will lump these two together and call them the lumbosacral plexus. Okay, lump it all into one. So the femoral nerve is going to be this big giant one that you see here. That's going to be your femoral nerve, doing most things in the anterior thigh and running down the front of the leg. Okay, and then the one that goes right through that obturator foramen, remember that opening there? The one that goes right through that obturator foramen there is going to be your obturator nerve. Okay, and it's going to hit a lot of things on the inside of the thigh, groin area, that medial side there. Okay, on the back side, we have probably one of our most famous nerves that lots of people know about. Okay, so we have the sciatic nerve, which is this giant one right here. So that's the actual sciatic nerve. So it's going to hit most of the branches of it, will take care of most of the muscles in your butt, coming down the back of your thigh. And then as it hits about the knee area, that popliteal region on the back of the knee there, it's going to split into the tibial nerve and the common fibular. The tibial nerve will stay going right down the back of the tibia, and the common fibular will wrap around the outside edge on top of that fibula bone. So again, remembering where our bones are will help us with these nerve names. So the sciatic nerve starts as this one big nerve, and then it will branch into these two smaller nerves around the area. So like I said, in class, we're going to look at exactly what muscles and stuff these nerves control, and we'll be sharing and presenting that information out to our class.